This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 25th of February 2021, and I am 2J.
I am CS.
And I am Miss K, your host again. In case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, Uhuru Raila Unleash Strategy. The Standard, Raila, if I am elected. And The Star, how Uhuru Raila plan to deliver June referendum. Let's see what it takes us.
The Standard, where it talks about if I am elected. Right next to it, you'll see it is asking, what next for William Ruto? We want to tell you exactly what should be next for William Ruto. Resign. With every passing day, it is becoming abundantly apparent who the real enemies of progress are. Super Tuesday was a resounding and unequivocal testimony of the fact that the Tanga disinformation campaign has failed and failed miserably. In fact, as much as people are saying Baringo was the exception, evidence is now pointing to the fact that there was illegal interference and investigations are being carried out. People need to start asking the question, why is William Ruto afraid of BBI?
Yes.
BBI enhances devolution, increases accountability, and expands the quality of representation. Why is he afraid of these things? We would like to remind you that some of the key proposals being reintroduced through BBI are proposals that were there in the Bomas draft, which was then manipulated by politicians in Naivasha. Maybe you should be asking if the DP was among those politicians who were pushing for the change in the Bomas draft.
Yes.
What was he afraid of then, and what is he afraid of now? When you have a prime minister in the National Assembly and cabinet ministers sitting in parliament as well, you have greater accountability. So why doesn't William Ruto want to be held accountable? What is it that he's planning to do if he should come to power? Secondly, increasing revenue allocation by more than double of what it is now means that there is greater transparency on how funds are utilized because it is closer to the people. And more money also addresses the people's most pressing needs at the grassroots. Why does William Ruto not want this? Why does he want more money to stay in the central government? Is he saying that if he comes to power, that he is the only one who will be able to determine what is good for more than 40 million people? Isn't that the hallmark of hubris and totalitarianism? And are these signs of being a dictator why he would dare defy the president in public? Is this why we are witnessing a dereliction of duty by someone who has been entrusted with being a custodian of the people's business? The fact is this continued tendency to fight or contradict the government in public goes against the principle of collective responsibility, the convention whereby members of the cabinet are held accountable and are answerable for the actions and decisions of government as a whole. It is a constitutional convention that has existed since the 18th century, and it is considered a cornerstone of cabinet government. Collective responsibility has two main components. First, ministers should be able to have free and frank discussions prior to coming to a collective decision. But these discussions should remain confidential. Second, once a position has been agreed in cabinet, all ministers are expected to abide by that position and articulate the position of government, or else resign from office. A lack of collective responsibility can have major political costs. Leaking of cabinet discussions and failure to maintain a unified public view undermines credibility of government and therefore stability. Therefore, members of the executive who breach collective responsibility are expected to resign.
Ooh, tough words. Oh, wow.
Very tough words, but also truthful words. We do have that collective responsibility as cabinet, and if cabinet doesn't keep to it, and the executive doesn't keep to it, then...
Yeah, but I think it also goes back to what you were saying, CS. What is William Ruto so afraid of? I think the biggest issue, I think, on this panel we've had with him is that, sure, it's fine, disagree with BBI, but give us some suggestions, or give us an alternative.
I think,
policy. Disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing means nothing. It does nothing for us. I think I'm going to look at probably what most of the headlines have tackled, which was a lot of Raila speak. And I want to tell people about something. In March of 2013, advocate Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi introduced a brilliant but fairly unknown phrase into the Kenyan lexicon. It was called the Raila Doctrine. It was created within the context of the 2013 post-election court cases, where one Raila Odinga could not come to the terms of his loss of the election and instead fought to have them found fraudulent. At this time, this was Raila's third failed attempt at the presidency. And Ahmed Nasir, as counsel for the IEBC, hit the nail on the head when he identified this Raila doctrine. It goes as follows. A presidential election can never be declared to have been free and or fair unless Raila Odinga wins the election. I will read that again. A presidential election in Kenya can never be declared to have been free and or fair unless Raila Odinga wins the election. At its core, its brilliance comes from just so simply capturing the very principles that have defined our Baba man and his politics. But I don't actually believe that they describe the Raila of today. This is the closest that Raila has ever gotten to the presidency. It's so close he can taste it. And arguably, it's also the most well-behaved he has been in decades. And I think it has something to do with the tough lessons that Raila was forced to learn. If he had been loyal to Kibaki, he would have been made president. If his father, Jaramogi, had been loyal to Kenyatta, he would have been made president. William RUTO, do you see a pattern here? On Tuesday on the panel, JM reminded us that people do not become president, they are made president. Fact. And while the deputy president is renting Kikuyus and making promises in an effort to become president, things are happening all around him. Raila Odinga will be made president. Do not bite the hand that feeds you today because you might be hungry tomorrow. Raila took years to learn this lesson, and I doubt he will forget it. He has absorbed the politics of patience and loyalty, and he will be rewarded. And of course, the numbers will be, to his support. He brings to the table 44% of registered voters. And Super Tuesday was proof that the ground is ready. He only needs to persuade 7% of the Gema vote to take the day. Point is, loyalty is everything, patience is a virtue, and you cannot stop an idea whose time has come.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I would like to, borrow from what you've just said, Tujay, on not biting the hand that feeds you, and I'll give a story to the BBI oppositionists. It's from the Decemberist Uprising in Russia. It was a rebellion that happened in 1825, led by a renegade called Raila. So to quell the rebellion, the Tsar, Nicholas I, arrested Raila and sentenced him to hang by the neck. On the day of the execution, Raila stood on the gallows, the noose around his neck, and the trap door opened. But as he dangled there, the rope broke, throwing him to the ground. Now, in those days, when something like this happened, it was considered a sign from heaven, and a man was saved from execution in this way, he was usually pardoned. So as Raila got to his feet, dirty, but believing he had been said, he called out to the crowd that had gathered to watch this thing. You see, in Russia, they don't know how to do anything properly, not even how to make rope. And a messenger immediately went to Nicholas I with the message of the failed hanging. Disappointed by the news, the Tsar began to sign the pardon. But he asked, did Raila say anything after this miracle? Sire, the messenger replied, he said that in Russia they don't know how to make even rope. In that case, said the Tsar, let me prove him wrong. He tore the pardon, and Raila was hanged again, and this time the rope did not break. So some people have been saying that BBI will fail, but it passed at the counties. Some other people are now saying, they said this in The Nation yesterday, that the so-called system is scared of them and is acting on overdrive. To these people, I'd like to give a humble warning. Watch your words. Because once your words are out, you cannot take them back. The momentary satisfaction you gain from your biting words will outweigh the price you have to pay. And we have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge the headlines for you. We ask ourselves, is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy?
On the note of what you just said, Miss K, I think it's so interesting because after, the sweeping success of Super Tuesday, you had some tanga, people come out and say, but we were never fighting BBI. Who told you that?
It's
and they were asking, why are you celebrating something that you never had to fight for?
It was always in the bag.
So be careful about what you say.
Clearly, be careful what you say. But what do we say about these headlines? Daily Nation, Uhuru, Raila unleash strategy. Raila, if I am elected, your kind words to him. And the Star, how Uhuru Raila plan to deliver June referendum.
I would toss the Star.
Definitely.
Toss the Standard. I'd give it to the Daily Nation because I think the idea of strategy really is that, you're overlooking everything. Strategy is, it's very important.
Daily Nation it is. That is our winning headline. Uhuru Raila unleash strategy. I'd like to read us the political pieces that we call cartoons, but they all failed in our vision and we have no winning cartoon. On to our final thought. But before we get there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought. Remember this week that we're looking at books that are going to help us get to the future faster. And today we look at a Fifth Estate favorite, and I think almost now classic, Antifragile, The Things That Gain from Disorder, written by Nassim Taleb. So, of course, Nassim Taleb is the best-selling author of The Black Swan, which is one of our favorite books. And he's one of the foremost philosophers of our time. And in this book, he tells us how some systems actually benefit from disorder. I know that might sound counterintuitive. And this book comes from his Incerto group of works. It's 4 books he's put together about managing risk and uncertainty. So, of course, in this book, in that group of books, Incerto, we have Black Swan, we have Fooled by Randomness, Skin in the Game, and the final book in this grouping is Antifragile. And so, very interestingly, in 2020, Taleb actually said that the COVID-19 outbreak was not a black swan event. Most people said that it was. Because he says that a black swan is a rare and unpredictable outlier event. I think 9/11 may be considered as a black swan moment because it was something that we were not able to tell. Also, the rise of the internet, that was a black swan moment. In 2007, he actually wrote in another book. He said, as we trace more on this planet, epidemics will become more acute. We have a germ population dominated by a few numbers, and the successful killer will spread more vastly than ever. I see the risks of a very strange acute virus spreading throughout the planet. He's basically saying in this book that this was bound to happen. And I think even the book that we did on Tuesday on viruses and pandemics told us the exact same thing. So what he did in Black Swan is he outlined a problem. He told us that as people, we have this inability to foresee the obvious. But in this book, he offers a definitive solution, how to gain from disorder and chaos while also being protected from fragilities and adverse events. So the central theme of this book, he actually explains very well in the prologue. He says that some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and they grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors. Yet in spite of this ubiquity of this phenomenon, he says that there is no word for the exact opposite of fragile. And he says, let us call it anti-fragile. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience. It's beyond robustness. The resilient resists shocks and it stays the same. The anti-fragile, it gets better, it gets stronger. And so he divides the world into 3 categories: the fragile, the robust, and the anti-fragile. He does this on a spectrum. He says that if you are fragile, you avoid disorder and disruption for fear of the mess that it might make in your life. It will, make you a little bit unstable. If you're robust, you can stand up to shocks without flinching and without changing who you are. But he says, if you are anti-fragile, if those shocks happen, they make you stronger and they make you more creative. You're better able to adapt with every new challenge that you face. So obviously in this book, all he's asking is that we should be more anti-fragile. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic book and a great way to think about how to deal with things, right?
And I like what you just said, because that's exactly where I'd like to pick up at, and I'll recite that quote again. Antifragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same.
Yes.
The antifragile gets better. This property is behind everything that has changed with time. Evolution, culture, ideas, revolutions, political systems, technological innovation, culture, and even economic success. Antifragility determines the boundary between what is living and organic, say the human body, and what is inert, say a physical object like the stapler on your desk. I would like to propose to you that the Constitution of Kenya is anti-fragile. It is a living document that is meant to evolve and survive various stress tests to emerge even better than before. The Constitution is also anti-fragile because, like other complex systems, it is full of interdependencies, which can sometimes be hard to detect at first. And the effect of some of these interdependencies can only become more apparent over time, which is why when we gifted ourselves with the current constitution in August of 2010, we could not foresee all the implications of implementation. 10 years down the line, this experiment in democracy has yielded results, which must now inform how we adjust the parameters of our democracy.
Yeah.
Let us take one example. When the Commission on Revenue Allocation was established by Article 215 of the Constitution, the revenue formula, sharing formula they used initially is quite markedly different from the current third generation formula. This is because not all the interdependencies were initially apparent.
So true.
The first generation formula therefore focused on the following parameters. Population factor, which had a weighting or importance of 45%. Basic equal share was weighted at 25%. Poverty was weighted at 20%. Land area was 8%. And fiscal effort, how well the county used their money, was given a weighting of 2%. This weighted formula is what was used to determine how money was allocated to the various counties. The second generation formula went one step further and included the ones I've just mentioned, but added an extra parameter, which was the development factor. And this was given a weighting of 1%. These 6 things give different levels of importance and is what determined how money was allocated to the counties. The third basis for revenue sharing, the third generation formula, takes on a very different approach based on the experience from the first 7 years.
Yeah.
Major lessons were learned about interdependencies when it comes to devolving funds, and this therefore resulted in a formula that aims to redistribute resources based on functions assigned to counties and key services. The parameters have first of all been categorized in 2 to begin with. So category 1 is enhanced service delivery. Under this, you have services in the health sector, which has a weight allocation of 17%, agriculture at 10%, urban services at 5%, basic share at 20%, and other county services at 18%. Category 2 focuses on promoting balanced development, which is informed by land area, weighted at 8%, roads at 4%, poverty is weighted at 14%. Additionally, you have incentive parameters, the fiscal effort and fiscal prudence, both at 2%. So the point is this. Our constitution is not meant to be static.
Yes.
Nor is it meant to be frozen in time. It is for this very reason that the drafters included Article 256 and 257 to begin with, so as to facilitate an environment for this living document to evolve, for us to learn the lessons of the past, from the past 10 years and from when we gained independence.
Yeah, and in order for it to be anti-fragile.
It's true.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very important.
And for this experiment in democracy to better succeed.
I'd like to borrow from what you're talking about, those interdependencies and how we keep on editing our constitutional formulas based on them. And I'd like to talk about something he also mentions in this book. That's the author. This is the benefits of redundancy. And I'll do this by starting with the triad, the spectrum that you gave at the beginning, 2J. You said there's either fragile, robust, or anti-fragile.
Yes.
And I'd like to say that our political situation in Kenya, the configuration we have at the top, has made Kenya a fragile system. So every 5 years, a high-stakes, winner-take-all race to a Ferrari presidency has put us all at risk of electoral violence. But BBI has introduced what some politicians are calling the redundant positions of Prime Minister and 2 Deputy Prime Ministers. And is that a bad thing, so to speak? Well, I guess for them it is, because the word redundant normally has a negative connotation. It means something that is needlessly repeated and is therefore superfluous.
Yeah.
So according to those opposed to BBI, the Matatu presidency is redundant and unnecessary. But according to our author today, intentionally cultivating redundancy can make a system anti-fragile.
Yeah.
So layers of redundancy are the central risk management property of natural systems. And he says that in engineering, redundancies are often intentionally built into a system. Why? By duplicating critical components. If one piece fails, the other can act as a backup, keeping the machine functioning.
Yeah.
In fact, an example is an aeroplane. You have multiple engines.
Yes.
One engine fails, your life is saved
Backup.
by the backup engine. Redundancies are also built into the human body. I mean, we human beings have 2 kidneys, 2
Yes.
lungs, extra capacity in our brains. But human beings, now us, the people, do not understand this natural law. We like to remove redundancies for the sake of efficiency.
Yeah.
And we do not realize that by removing these these redundancies, we're making ourselves fragile.
Fantastic.
This is what the politicians did in Naivasha, I think my point of earlier this week. And we set ourselves up to fail. What is my lesson here? If you have a fragile system, introduce redundancy to reduce the fragility and increase the anti-fragility.
Yeah.
My message today is to those members of parliament that are opposed to the referendum bill because it introduces the redundant positions of deputy prime minister and one prime minister and 2 deputy prime ministers. A Matatu presidency is a good thing. The Matatu presidency will reduce Kenya's fragility to electoral violence. What you're calling redundant and inefficient is actually our most efficient route to anti-fragility.
Oh my goodness. Can we send 356 copies of this book to Parliament immediately?
I wish. Who's going to pay for them? Well, the revenue sharing formula told us that we have more money, so I guess maybe those guys. Anyway, today we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation, and we didn't have a winning cartoon. You can find us on your TV screens. We're on Pang Free to Air, Go TV, and Star Times. I'll leave you with a quote by President Bill Clinton on being president, former President Bill Clinton. And I feel like this quote applies to our president. Being president is like running a cemetery. You've got a lot of people under you and nobody's listening, such as the ones who should resign.
Wow.
Have a great day.